Hey guys, welcome back to Conscious Living. We've got another wonderful interview here. We're here today with Erfan Daliri, who has written 3 books and is a social change advocate, and he'll tell us a lot more about himself. But I just want to highlight Raising Humanity is a book that I've just finished and absolutely loved. And he's also written, these are your spoken word poetry pieces, so Esteban's Conclusions and a handful of paper planes, which I also have, and is incredible. So we'll definitely share all the information about these books in the bio, so check that out. But Erfan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really glad to be here. We're actually in Tasmania, which is amazing.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So could you just start by telling us a bit about yourself, I guess?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I am what's been called a social change actionist, so I'm a recovering activist. I'm trying to make as much positive social change in the world as I can. I'm a spoken word artist, a consultant, a youth educator, and just finished my Masters in Communication for Social Change. I was born in India to Iranian parents who happened to be refugees, and we moved to Australia when I was 1 back in 1984. Shows how old I am, for those who can do maths on the fly. And I've been working in Indigenous community work and in youth work for many years, about 10 or 15 years, as well as environmental advocacy and sustainability. Yeah.
So has, like, I guess this area of your life been something that you've always been interested in, or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel my parents, my dad's first job when he got to this country was a director of the Migrant Resource Centre, and like that was within the first year of him having arrived. He was already, as a refugee, still himself working to help other refugees settle, and my mother also has been working with aged care facilities as well as with youth engagement and migrant settlement. So being of service and being involved in social change was a big part of our lives. And as Baha'is, we're also always raised to include an element of service in every decision that we made, whether it was what to study, where to work. The idea of service to humanity was definitely a big part of our life. So it did play a big influence in where I ended up, for sure. Yeah. Has
there been a particular theme that you think has come across in your life in regards to the topics you've been particularly interested in? Or sort of all of it?
I think there's been a progression. So earlier on in life, as a teenager, my father was working at the time with migrant communities and migrant youth. And as a young person who came from a migrant background, it was natural for me to end up volunteering in those spaces. And then in my later teens, it was more with Indigenous communities because I was still a teenager and that's what my dad was doing, so that kind of led on to that. And then, that kind of moved on to more gender equality stuff, youth engagement, and in the last 5 years, it's kind of moved towards more environmental sustainability, and it all eventually becomes full circle. And after about 15 years, you begin to see how interconnected it all really is, and the refugee crisis and climate change and economic injustice and gender equality are all actually just like nodes within a much bigger network of what's going on. So I've been lucky enough to be involved in a lot of those different areas, so pretty grateful for that.
Yeah, amazing. I think a really big thing for me, especially during reading the book, is an aspect that you emphasise is empowering the youth and really communicating with the youth of today. How did that come about, or what is this interest you've got with the youth of today?
Part of it was seeded when I was myself a teenager, and I began in my late teens running these camps with my father called Youth Agents of Change, and this is like when I was 17 or 18, and just seeing the receptivity and the brilliance of these young people who had come from disadvantaged backgrounds to see how quickly they changed and how ready they were to serve the rest of the world, even just in the week or two that we had with them. So it was seeded back there, and then I guess over the course of the last 15 years, I've been involved in so many different areas, whether it's been like activism, like direct action activism, whether it's been like public speaking, advocacy type stuff, and the conversations and the consultancy. I've kind of like dealt with so many different diverse groups, and then it all kind of just made sense to me eventually that the change really is stemming from each new generation of youth that are empowered. So in the 60s and 70s, it was the youth, in every generation, and today again, it's the youth who are at the forefront of it. And if we kind of don't give them the attention that they require. If we in our homes, the parents aren't attentive to the needs of their teenagers, if the school education system isn't providing to their needs, then we really are slowing down the progress of social change. So yeah, the importance of giving that time to young people was like really solidified over the last 10-15 years.
Yeah, amazing. Did you ever feel as a teenager growing up being outcast at all by the Australian community or anything just because of your background? Or?
Totally. Yeah, it was a big part of it.
Yeah.
But I think hand in hand with having not really felt welcome, or like I grew up in Townsville.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I grew up in Melbourne. If I grew up in Melbourne, it would have been a completely different city. But Townsville was very much racist at the time. Still kind of is. It's on camera. It's okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
But so yeah, it was challenging. But at the same time, my parents were always very attentive to the fact that you are still Australian, and you know we didn't really cling to any old cultural identity. So growing up as a teenager, I didn't identify as Iranian or Persian so much. So even though I wasn't necessarily Australian or considered to be Australian, I was kind of like in this twilight space, in this middle ground where I didn't identify with any particular cultural identity very strongly, and that definitely helped me, I think, now, because I can view the world as a citizen of the globe rather than through the lens of a particular cultural identity. So again, I'm super grateful for that. And yeah, I don't hold any grudges for that. You know, kids will be kids, and you know they were just products of their families, and you know now I'm actually grateful for the challenges I faced as a teenager.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks Townsville.
Yeah, awesome. No, definitely. I think as well, like I've not the typical, I guess, Australian person, and growing up when you sort of are different and not the norm, it can be quite confronting, but it's how you approach those challenges and how you deal with it.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's how you frame that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess looking at the social change aspect, social movements that you're really interested in, could you share sort of your thoughts on it and how we can approach it as a society, like social movements, and how we view it and the lens that we look at it through?
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So many different things. Where do I jump in? It's like this massive ocean, and like you can jump into the ocean from any spot you want in the world, but it's still the same ocean. So for me, all social change movements and social change initiatives and issues of injustice are interconnected. There's not a single thread in this universe or social fabric that isn't connected to the entire tapestry. So for me, I work with so many different diverse groups, and my advice is to those who are working in a specific social justice movement is to work out how that particular cause or movement connects with other causes, because it inevitably does. So I don't advocate for like one particular movement or cause being more important than another. Even climate change, for example, if you really look at that, you understand how it's the effect of human activities. So the fact that we're in the Anthropocene, which is the age of human activity changing the face of the planet, is because of our economy, for example. And our economy is very much based still on colonial practices. Even capitalism is another form of colonialism. So that connects back to indigenous issues. It connects back to gender issues. And that connects to refugee issues and conflict over resources. So like it doesn't really matter which part of the tapestry you grab, it is interconnected. And in order to understand how the mechanisms are all working, we need to work out how our cog in the system connects with other cogs. And then the broader your vision is of the entire system, then the more effective our efforts will actually be. If you want to continue going down specific tunnels without connecting with other movements, then our efforts will have very limited effect.
Yeah. I guess something that I struggle with social movements is like I might have very strong views as an individual, and everyone's got their own opinions because of the way that they were brought up or their identity, sort of what we were talking about earlier. how do you approach that resistance to change? Like, what are your thoughts on that? And when you're talking to somebody, and how do you create a dialogue rather than an argument?
Yeah. So I try and frame my messaging for those who are receptive to it or who seek it. So I actively avoid situations where a person is intending to have an argument.
Don't go to the negative sort of thing. You want that positive.
Don't even bother. Don't even bother. So society exists in somewhat of a bell curve, in that there are people who are trying to push the evolution of society, whether it's economic justice, gender equality, all that sort of stuff. And on the opposite end of the bell curve is the other minority who are adamantly against it. But the vast majority sits somewhere in the middle. And our efforts should be directed to the majority who may not be completely aware or may have some sort of ignorance around an issue, but they're not like directly opposed to you. And that's where I generally try and focus my efforts. If I find a person who wants an argument or seeks an argument over whatever, animal rights or plant-based diet or climate change or whatever, I won't engage in that situation, because you've only got a certain amount of energy to impart in this world in every given day. And if you want to use that energy to argue with someone who is just wanting an argument, you're not going to change the world very quickly. So whether it's writing in the book, whether it's the talks and lectures that I give, or the events that I run, I make my message very loud and clear that this is for those who want to be involved in the process of change, and thereby your words aren't falling on ears that don't want to hear them. You're actually helping other people empower themselves to create change. And those who are clung to old ways and old systems and old identities will eventually, when they're ready, decide that they want to change some part of their lives. And it's not my job or anyone who wants to change the world's job to change people, the individual people. It's really important for activists and change makers to understand that it is the structures that people function within that we need to change. The pathways that they're following, the flows of economy, the systems of education, the businesses that we give our money to. For the vast majority of human beings, they just want to keep a roof over their heads, feed their kids, put them through school, and just live a simple life. And for those who want to be a part of changing the world, we have to change the systems that people function within, and that's how we change the world.
Yeah. It sounds simple, right?
Exactly. Sounds simple.
But it's a lifetime of work. Yeah, totally. So I try and make it sound really simple, so it's not overwhelming, but it is a lifetime of work. It's not, there is no quick fix, there is no, look, if we do this in the next 5 years, then we're going to change the world. It is like a tree doesn't grow in 5 years, it's a lifetime, and it continues to evolve over a lifetime.
For sure. Something I just thought of with the sort of empowering people and getting people to be aware as well of these social movements or challenges that we're facing in the world is something where people's identities are questioned. And a big part of that comes down to this capitalist system that we live in. And part of that is the concept of consumption and accumulating things for the individual. And it's very self-driven, individualistic sort of society that we live in. In your talks, when you are talking to youth, is that something that you approach, or how do you speak to that, and how can...
So to say that society is individualistic and consumer driven is very true, and we are living in an excessive consumerist capitalist kind of society. But if you look at it and stare at that problem for long enough, you understand it's the marketing of these products is influencing people, sure. But the reason why that marketing works on one person and not the next, there's another underlying reason underneath that, which is a deep spiritual lack in people's lives. A lack of community, a lack of spiritual nourishment, a lack of purpose. So if we address those things, then the marketing that's employed to cause consumerism is less effective on people, and then the consumerism itself stops. We can't just tell people you're being consumerist without understanding why. So people are trying to fill this massive gap in themselves through consuming products and technologies and foods that they shouldn't be eating, or constantly shopping for new clothes or whatever it might be, yachts, cars, watches. But if we recognize that that's trying to fill a void, and we address the void, then the consumerism itself will eventually slow down, and the marketing of these products won't work. And that's kind of how I try and approach it. People have tried to create a sense of meaning or purpose in their lives through the products that they purchase and consume and throw away. And that's where we need to address it.
Yeah. Do you find that people are quite receptive to that, or there's a hesitancy, or people just say, but if I want that t-shirt, I'll buy it, or if I want that thing?
Well, I don't have these I don't go right into that at the bus stop, for example, or on the tram. But like if someone's asking me about it, or if I'm giving a seminar about it, then I will definitely touch on that topic, and people will somehow innately, if it's truth, feel it on some level inside themselves. So yeah, you don't usually hear any resistance to that idea. They're like, oh yeah, that kind of does make sense, because it's just basic common sense if you think about it.
It's like a temporary feel-good moment, I find, like with consumerism, you know, it's I want to feel good right now. It's that immediate sort of gratification, satisfaction thing, but the long-term side of it, you're still going to have that lack, and unless you can seek these things that we've mentioned.
So I won't go into shopping centres and give that spiel in the middle of the mall because they're not wanting or ready to hear that, and it's really confronting to tell someone about a plant-based diet, for example, when they've got a mouthful of meat in their mouth, right? So, but if you're speaking with a group of students, or giving a lecture or writing a book, then yes, those themes are definitely things that I speak about quite often. But it's got to be the receptive audience. Do
you think the younger people they find it a little bit easier to get all this information from you, whereas to hit that older target? Like I always find when you speak to parents or older people, they're already set in their ways. They're doing that now. Whereas when you have that younger youth, you can actually you're feeding them that nice current information, and they're actually taking it back and going, maybe this could work for me, sort of thing.
They 100% already know it. Like they already know it. They feel it. They're embodying it. I don't even need to teach them anything. Innately, they are aware that consumerism isn't right. It's something that's like hammered into our heads through our childhood and teenage years, but the children innately know the movement that's currently forming around climate change right now is a much more evolved and like connected movement to previous environmental movements. The young people involved in the school strikes, they understand economic injustice, they understand gender equality, they understand indigenous rights, they understand how our economy and consumerism is leading to climate change. So I don't even need to explain these things. All young people need is for people of a higher generation to reaffirm what they already know. And to say, yes, this thing that you're talking about, it's true, it's right, and you need to follow that pathway, rather than trying to beat that awareness out of them through our education system, through our marketing, through terrible parenting, whatever it might be. So yes, definitely young people are more aware of it and receptive, but they already know it, and I think they just need someone to just give them a nod and say, you've already worked it out, just keep doing what you're doing.
So let us know a bit more about the book, because I know I haven't read it, Jess has. And how was the book tour? So you get some good feedback, any bad feedback or anything like that?
I'm waiting for some bad feedback, and I'm just hoping that I'll hear about it. But it's been phenomenal. The response was amazing. The book tour was like 6 weeks long, up and down the East Coast, via ground. So I drove from place to place to reduce the emissions as much as I could.
Of course.
And I spoke with young students from like grade 2 to grade 7. I spoke with university groups. I spoke at different meetings with NGOs. The tour was incredible, and sold a bunch of books and had some amazing conversations with people. I'm really grateful that I was able to crowdfund the funds to actually get it and cover the tour costs as well. So pretty stoked about that. As far as what it's about, I mean, you've read the book. So.
Yeah, we don't want to give away too much.
I know.
Definitely want people to buy it. I would highly recommend.
I can actually vouch for that, because every night Jess was just reading away and I was sleeping next to her. She loved it.
Did you have any questions out of it, I guess, since you have read it?
I mean, I don't want to give away too much, and I think one of the key things that came out of the book for me was the positivity, you know. It wasn't like you're trying to tell people to be a certain way, to believe certain things. You're not being forceful with your opinions or with your perspective on things, and that was, I think, something that's really powerful for us, especially with our page, because we're really aware that there is a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
And you got to be important. It's really important who you're listening to and what you're reading.
Yeah.
And so I found that really positive in the book, is that something you continue to come back to is this concept of just a sort of approaching everything with an open mind, but also with this concept of love. And we've sort of lost that idea of love for the community, love for the planet, and unconditionally, even for ourselves, you know. And I really like that in the book, and maybe you could expand on that. Like, how do you maintain positivity in the face of everything that is going on?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting that I intentionally wrote it to be optimistic and positive. And one of my friends, Ada Ricketts, who is a lecturer of law and justice and an activist as well with Extinction Rebellion, he gave me a review and he said it's confrontingly optimistic. So it's so optimistic that it's like it's almost too optimistic. But yeah, I'm aware that there's a lot of terrible injustice going on. I spent many years trapped in that constant battle with injustice. I'm like, oh, this is unfair, this is unjust, economic injustice, colonialism, gender equality, homelessness, like. And I'm like, well, I spent, a good part of 10 years wrapped up in all of the injustice, but it didn't actually help me to create any change, to address it. Looking at a house that's on fire and pointing out the fact that it's on fire doesn't put the fire out. Being upset about homelessness doesn't solve homelessness. And being angry about gender equality doesn't fix gender inequality. So I intentionally wrote this book and tried to filter out every time I wrote a sentence, I'm like, this sounds almost a little bit negative. I would reframe it and use different words to express it in a different way, because as much as there is terrible things going on in the world, we're not going to solve it from a place of anger or resentment or division even. And the problems that we're facing stem from disunity and disconnect. So, and that's kind of two of the main themes throughout the book, is the idea of disconnect with other people and disunity amongst human beings, as well as disconnect from our physical ecology as well as our spiritual kind of ecology. So with that sort of framework, I guess, I specifically wrote the book to facilitate connection and to help people connect ideas, connect people, and that requires love. And if you've got genuine love for the planet, then that should carry through your work. And with love, anger is able to be channeled into something else that's positive. Without love, it becomes destructive. So it's just a matter of being able to understand there is injustice, but not getting caught in that kind of whirlpool of it, and working through a framework, through a perspective of love. How can I bring love into this space to fix this issue?
And empower others. I think that's something that's comes through in the book as well, is empowering everyone around us as well to see that what they can do.
Totally.
It's not a one-man job. We need to all work together.
Yeah, everyone's like, I see it as a privilege and an honor, like to be able to be involved in the process of social change. Not everyone is in a position to be able to do that. So if we are in a position in life where we are able to assist the evolution of society, it's a privilege and an honor, and we need to respect that and actually engage with it lovingly and respectfully, and not be indignant or hateful about the injustices that we find. And if others aren't able to be a part of it, we shouldn't have any resentment towards them either. If you've got a life that allows you to try and create social change, then enjoy that and through love create a better world so that others can then benefit from that better world that you've created. So that's how I try and look at it.
It's great. It's really, really good. Something that I wish I probably had have known growing up is like this self-awareness and the awareness of what is going on in the world. What advice would you give to people that sort of they feel that there's something more but they're not sure what, and building self-awareness as well as an individual about what's happening in a wider framework? Like, what advice would you have for building
self-awareness?
Self-awareness, yeah, I think that's what I'm asking.
Self-awareness from outside of the self?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I guess it's this idea of consciousness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we can be so caught up in this one frame of mind. I find it interesting, like I've spoken to people, babies, right? When they're first born, like, you know, we're not born and identify it as a race, as a religion, as anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything is the same, but we're socialised and we go through our education system, the way that we're brought up by our parents. All these different areas of our life change who we are. But sometimes, like, I think you get to that point when you're a teenager maybe where you're like, do I even know who I am? And have I just been told all of these things that this is the sort of person you are, and this is what you believe, and this is what you would like to do?
Yeah.
For somebody who's maybe questioning that.
Totally.
Does that,
Yeah. So I view personal identity as clothing, and culture even as clothing, and which makes them both arbitrary and redundant, in that it doesn't, like, it's not who you are. The clothing that you wear when you walk out into the street isn't a reflection of who you truly are, and unfortunately we have been fooled into, or maybe we just never were aware of the fact that our story, our personal identity, is not a true reflection of the consciousness that animates your form. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that the cultural identity that we have, that we're born into, the socialization that we're kind of like trained into, these are all clothes, and it doesn't matter like what clothes you wear, as long as you've got something on you. But like one set of clothing to the next set of clothing is not a distinction that's worthy of like fighting over something, you know, with someone else with. And when we begin to look at what's underneath that, that's when we actually develop self-awareness. We can't be self-aware and still trapped in the ego or identity, and like, this is my culture, this is my race, this is my religion, and this is more important than the next culture, race, religion. When we begin to like take off those layers, then we can actually view the world through new eyes. We can see truths that we couldn't see previously because of the filters that we had on our perspective of the world. So yeah, for anyone who's like wanting to truly affect change in the world that's real and sustainable and actually effective, we need to be able to look at the world from outside of our individual identities and our stories, and not think that a particular story that was given to you, because most of us, like, by the time we're even aware of ourselves as an individual, we're in our teenage years already, and up until by that time we've had so much experience that has kind of formed us and shaped us, that we think that that's who we actually are, not realizing that all of that was just pure fluke and chance and arbitrary and redundant and doesn't mean anything. So yeah, it's about looking at who exists underneath that. And then you can see people as one. But if you want to constantly re-emphasize the divisions of race and culture and community and this group over that group, or this or even yourself as separate to other members of your community, then that's divisive, and it's not going to help us find our way through this.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give somebody who wants to do something more but they're not sure how or where to start?
Read the book. That's it.
Well, no, I mean, it depends. It depends on like where they're at in life and how they want to change the world. It depends if you're like, you know, you've got a family and then you live in this town, or if you're a single person living on the other side of the world. Like, it depends. We each have a different role to play in life. I think one of the core themes that I try and weave through the book is probably one of the most useful pieces of advice, is that we are life looking at itself. And there is no distinction or delineation between not only human beings between each other, but human beings and the ecology from which we have sprung. And the laws of nature, the laws that govern this entire universe, have underlying truths and principles within them that have sustained life on this planet and evolved life on this planet for billions of years. And if we move away from those basic patterns and functions, then we will cause ourselves pain and suffering. So study of ecology and understanding the patterns and underlying principles of life is important, and those principles can then be applied to everything from education to economics to social systems of governance, and it's a matter of understanding the ecology, that answer. But for me, the laws of nature and of this universe have sustained life on this planet for billions of years.
And I actually think they will always outlive us. I don't know, you know what I mean? We should be abiding by nature, not the other way around. That's what I always feel like. I'm always in the ocean, everything like that. At the end of the day, we're just another species. If nature wanted to, see you later, we could be all gone. And I find that so fascinating. It's really, really interesting when you think of it like that.
And finding those underlying core principles, it's difficult to express when people often don't spend much time in and around a natural environment. They are led to believe that they can exist outside of a connection with nature, not realizing that the oxygen that they're breathing was the fart of a dinosaur, and that if the bees don't exist, then food doesn't exist, and that nothing in life can exist without anything else. If we begin to understand these things and realize how connected we actually are, we'll not just heal our own traumas, but also begin designing better systems to govern life by.
Something that I think of when we do talk about these things is the labels that people can give individuals that have these sorts of beliefs. And I think, I find I can become angry, which is not the right approach, but it does make me upset when it's but you're just like a greenie, you're a lefty, or all these different labels that people give us, and I feel like it devalues these issues. You know what I mean? Because they're basically putting a blanket over the beliefs that people are saying. How do you approach that? How do we move away from these labels, and how do we ensure that it is an inclusive discussion, and it's not, for example, the zero waste lifestyle from where we live. I find it's become something that only the wealthy can afford, because I've got my eco toothbrushes and my eco kitchen things, and how do we make it a discussion where everyone can be involved, and we don't label it? I think that's something we really struggle with as a society, is putting identity labels and things on people.
That's a tricky one. People just love labels, and I think it's, language is labels. So words are labels and everything, and we've just become accustomed to grouping things and labeling things, and that's kind of we've tried to understand things through the head, and that's what the head does. It compartmentalizes, and it uses labels to title different things. So it comes, unfortunately, naturally to us these days to label things, and it becomes easier to argue against something if you group it into a large box of things, and if you if you group all animal rights advocates into one box, it's easier to argue against all of them in one fell swoop, because one thing that one person does then reflects the entire group. So it's doing, the person who uses labels and insists on using them is doing themselves a disfavor. And if you're trying to have a conversation about social justice or social change or environmentalism, and someone insists upon using broad sweeping statements, then I will disengage, individually I will disengage in that conversation and be well, cool, I'm not going to be able to help you, and then ourselves, as those who want to create change, we've got to be aware of avoiding labels and strongly identifying with any particular group or even a movement for me. So yes, I'm an animal rights advocate, and I'm a plant-based eater, and I'm a vegan or whatever, but I don't, it hasn't become a part of my identity. So I'll speak about these things without it being a part of who I am. And I think if we want to try and create change in the world, then we've got to try and move beyond labels, as helpful as they are to understand certain parts of life. In order to get the whole picture back together, we've got to move beyond putting people into groups and categories, and that it goes both ways as well. So someone who isn't vegan or plant-based or isn't using a keep cup, we can't label them either as ignorant or arrogant or consumerist or capitalist or whatever, because that's not helpful either. And I
guess it all just comes back to this idea of just always being open-minded, just approaching everything.
And I think we can see that from today, because the thing is, like, you can basically see, let's say if we were to eat meat, you wouldn't judge us, you know what I mean? And we can see that, whereas, a lot of people that do push their points of view and people just go the other way, like they could look at you and be like, you're doing the wrong thing, I'm going to put you in that box, and they're labeling you over there, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, someone might believe that this action is the wrong thing. It doesn't mean that I will let go of my beliefs and not believe that eating meat is wrong. I can still well believe that, and I do, but I won't stop a conversation with someone or become aggressive towards someone because of a certain belief that I have. And I think that's what a lot of people who want to create change environmentally or with social justice issues, they forget that, and they think that by like screaming louder or by calling a racist, you make them somehow less racist. You don't. By pointing at someone and calling them names, that doesn't like inspire change in a person. So if the point is to change the world, then we've got to do it differently. If the point is to be angry at other people, then sure, we can go and point fingers all we want, and it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, exactly. Something that we haven't touched on is the New Kind Festival. Can you tell us a bit about that and sort of what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, so I was running festivals with my dad for many, many years. He started his Townsville Cultural Festival like 25 years ago. So I grew up running events and festivals with him, and I could see how powerful a mechanism for transformation festival environments were, because you get to create the whole environment that people walk into. And then while I was doing my masters, I decided that I wanted to use that platform as a tool to empower people to create social change. So I started working on New Kind maybe like 5 years ago, and we launched the first one in 2017, and it's basically a 5-day conference / festival where we bring together speakers from all different types of study and activism, and try and empower people who want to change the world to actually understand how the world works. So we have everything from mental health to early childhood education to lectures on economics to waste-free living, to workshops on direct action, to discussion panels on books and the importance of literacy in children. So it's a really diverse program, and the idea is that if we want to empower people to be able to create effective change in society, they need to understand where their cog meets with the rest of the mechanisms of society, and then people are able to focus on their part of the change, aware of everything else that's going on. So that's kind of how New Kind came to be, and it's a zero waste, plant-based diet, renewable energy only event, and every year we have about 400 to 500 people rocking up for 5 days.
Amazing.
Learning how to change the world more effectively than they were previously. And
a great way to just meet people that you might not come across regularly.
Like-minded people,
Incredible. It totally is. People often feel alone or isolated in the work that they're trying to do, and it's really, I've seen so many incredible changes happen when people from different fields of thinking come together and collaborate, or even within the same, just to know that there's someone else working on something very similar to what you're working on is super empowering. So I'm really stoked that I can be a part of putting on this thing. In January will be the fourth one.
Oh, amazing. So we'll definitely put the dates up for that as well.
Sure.
And that's here in Tassie?
It's in Marion Bay.
Good place to come.
It's really
We're finding out now.
It's a good time of year as well. Like late January it's warm weather, and hopefully the weather will be kind to us. Marion Bay, where the Force Festival actually is held, is where New Kind is as well. Same site. So pretty stoked.
And
cool.
I just realised as well, another massive part of what you do is poetry and spoken word pieces.
Right.
And that's actually how I first met Erfan, was when he was doing spoken word piece and reading his poetry. And I noticed that even just when you talk to us, like, I just feel like the way you speak sometimes is like poetry.
Well, you just want to keep on listening, and that's what I think that's been amazing today. Like just getting all this information from today and getting it all in, and it makes you feel better, you know, that there are like-minded people out there and that they're trying to be better, they're doing the right thing, they're on those right steps, and it's been amazing.
Is the poetry like that form of communication? Is that something that you've always done, or?
No, I stumbled upon it like maybe 9 years ago. Just like, I wasn't always writing poetry. I studied engineering at uni and wasn't really into writing or even reading poetry. And I just stumbled across it about 9 years ago. Heard about spoken word and you know, realized that people actually like write, form poetry, and it was all new to me. So I started writing, and within a couple of years, I published my first book. And a few years later, I did another book.
This one, right?
Yeah, that was the first one in 2013 and 2016, and so just by sheer fluke, I fell into it, and it came naturally. I was comfortable with public speaking, and performing my pieces came really, really naturally to me. Yeah.
Do you find people resonate differently as well when you communicate through poetry, or?
Totally. Yeah, the arts is really important. It's actually, I've written a poem about the importance of the arts in the book, because it bypasses people's like cognitive biases when you can put something into music or dance or theatre or film. They feel like they've kind of worked it out. So poetry helps as well. You can say things just like comedy. You can say things that people will laugh about, but then they'll realise the truth of it later. And poetry is kind of the same. If I was to speak directly about certain issues of social injustice, people will close up. But if you put it through a poem and wrap it around a narrative around it, then people are more likely to be moved by it. So we're interesting beings. It's like you can just hand someone the truth on a platter, and you know, as has been done over the past thousands of years. And every time people do give us pure truth, we've denied it and we rejected it. But if you put it through poetry all of a sudden or art, people are more receptive to it.
I just thought of something else as well. I don't know if this is tangenting, but what keeps you optimistic in the light of everything?
All the hard questions.
It's tough sometimes. But what does keep me optimistic is knowing myself. Knowing that like when I am able to change myself, then that gives me hope that other people are able to change, that the world can change. So I always connect it back to how am I feeling about what I've done today? How am I feeling about who I am today and how I've contributed to the world today? Do I feel like I did my best today as far as trying to do something that makes a difference? And that's what gives me hope. And then on the larger scale, I do believe as I started the book off saying, I do believe in the inherent goodness of human beings, and that at our core we are good people. We are good beings who want good things for others. But when we're afraid or when we're feeling inadequate or whatever, then we might act in ways that are unkind to other people. So that deep faith in the fact that we are at our core good gives me hope that regardless of what's going on, we will eventually work our way out of this. And those two things, I think. That's really powerful. I've asked Erfan to do a spoken I totally
word
forgot
piece.
about that.
But before I ask you to just pick any one of your poems maybe that you'd love to share, is there one piece of wisdom you'd like to share with everyone, a piece of advice that you could just sort of leave us with before you jump into the poem?
So many pieces of advice. I've written 3 books of advice.
Exactly. You don't need to pick just one as well, but I guess key things that we can come back to every day.
Key things is that this world is a dream, and that we're going to wake up from this room one day, and that usually, regardless of what happens in a dream, all you're left with when you wake up is how you feel about how you responded. So whether you're having an argument or hoarding gold or whatever it might be in your dream, when you wake up, none of that actually ever happened. You're perfectly safe. but all you are left with is how you feel about that response. Was I brave? Was I generous? Was I kind? And life is very much the same. So when our consciousness leaves our body, all we'll be left with is how we feel about how we responded. So if we continue to ask ourselves, how do I feel about how I'm living my life and how I responded to this dream, as real as it seems, that's a really good guiding principle for me. Next to that, try and find a way of being of service to humanity. Like, how can I be of service other than just seeing to my basic needs? What can I give to this world? Just like everything else in this world is giving of itself. You know, the tree gives fruit and shade, and the birds give song, and the soil gives us vegetables, and the sun gives us light and energy. Everything in nature is giving itself to something else. So how can we give of us? What can we give to the world, and how can we give of ourselves to the world? And as a guiding principle, that would change the vast majority of what human beings are doing to each other and to themselves, if we implemented those thoughts and ideas into our daily practice. So yeah, that would be the beginning of it, and then that could like spiral out to so many different things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to share a spoken word? You can look down the camera, you can look it up, whatever you prefer.
It might be awkward if I share this one and just staring straight at you. I might look at the camera. Hi. How you doing? I can share a short poem.
I remember when so I met Erfan at the South Coast Soul Festival, where he actually did multiple spoken word pieces, and I just said to him, what is spoken word? And so I guess if you could even just share that for people that don't know, and then
it's just it's poetry being shared on a stage, and sometimes it rhymes and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's a bit more like hip hop, and other times it's not, but it's just basically performance poetry. That's kind of taken off in Australia the last decade, I guess. But poetry has been a part of many cultures for many thousands of years, and it's just coming back in vogue here right now, but it's huge in other parts of the world. I got lucky enough to get involved a few years ago, and now I use it every now and then.
I think it's very powerful, so that's why I'm really happy. That's why I've asked you to share something.
I'll share a short one. I don't want to take up too much time, and I normally would be doing this on a stage or to an audience, but now I'm staring down the barrel of a camera. I'll do this one. Okay. When I see you, I see perfection. I see beings of light brought to life through love. I see a reflection of myself. I see God resting in the corners of your mouth as you point them towards the sky. Why don't you smile more often, child? Why don't you smile? If only you could see the beauty that I see when I look into your eyes, for in your very breath is the vastness of this universe and all of its skies. And God, she swims in your tears as they run down your face. And God, he loves the sound your heartfelt laughter makes, for God is the breeze who dances with your hair. And God is the rain who washes away all of your cares. So let your hair out, my love. Let me watch it dance with the breeze. Look with joy to the clouds that watch us from above. Imagine the beauty they see. If only for a moment, won't you turn your face to me? For my heart, it aches for you. I know that all you've ever wanted was to feel wanted. And I tell you now that you are so much more than you think that you are. You're a wish that someone has placed upon a star, and one day you will find that person. And when you do, then you'll realize it was always yourself. For now, just remember that you are loved and adored. You are missed even when you are near. And God, she's never far. He's looking at you every time you turn your face to the mirror. So clear yourselves of your fears, and you will see life a little clearer. You see, with every fear you manage to overcome, your heart will expand a little bit more, and it's able to carry a little bit more love until it can fit the entirety of the world. And when you do that, you'll realize that this was all you. This was all us. We did this. We created this universe just for fun. And the time is now approaching for us to once again be as one. Thanks.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thanks for coming out this way. Yeah.